You testified rampant corruption has long permeated Ukraine's political and economic systems?
Yes, that's a fair statement.
And it's your belief that it should be the U.S. foreign policy to help Ukraine curb its corruption problem?
Yes, because it's good for the Ukrainians, but it's also in our interests.
And anti-corruption efforts, you mentioned, serve a national security purpose?
I believe that to be true.
Are oligarchs a big part of the problem in Ukraine?
Probably, because so much wealth is concentrated in the hands of a very, very few, 6 or 7 individuals, and they also have political power and control the media.
And a lot of their power has been acquired through what we here in the U.S. would consider improper ways?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment.
The head of Burisma, Mr. Zochevsky, you familiar with him?
I don't know him, but I know who you're talking about.
George Kent testified a couple days ago that he was investigating for stealing millions and millions of dollars, some of which had been supplied by the U.S., Great Britain, subject to an investigation, trying to get the money back. That was a big part of Mr. Kent's initiatives when he was there. That a bribe was paid to the prosecutors, and Zochevsky was let off the hook. This was in 2014. Is this something that you're familiar with?
I've heard about it. This was before my arrival. And I would just say my understanding, but please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the U.S. money that you're referring to was the money that we used to fund an FBI team that was embedded with the Prosecutor General's office to go after, not to go after, but to do the investigation of Burisma and Zlochevsky.
Mr. Kent testified that this bribe was paid, the prosecution went away, and essentially nothing has been further done with regards to Burisma. During your tenure in Ukraine, has there ever been any focus on re-examining allegations, whether it's of Burisma or other powerful interests like Zlochevsky, re-examining it?
Is that on the part of the Ukrainian government? Is that what you're talking about?
Trying to lean on the various prosecutors general to clean up the oligarchical system?
I think, yes, there have been some efforts, and as I mentioned earlier in my testimony, the U.S. was welcoming of Mr. Lutsenko's nomination to the position of Prosecutor General, because we were hoping he would clean that up. That, in fact, is not what happened. And because, it's kind of hard to explain to a U.S. audience, but in Ukraine, in the former Soviet Union more broadly, including in Russia, the justice system, whether it's cops on the beat, whether it's investigators, whether it is prosecutors, whether it is judges, are used as a tool of the political system to be used against your political adversaries. And so I think that, going back to your question about Burisma and Zlochevsky, my understanding, this was, as I told you earlier in the previous deposition, this did not loom large when I arrived. I arrived in 2016, August 2016. But over time, my understanding was that the case was basically sort of on a pause, that it wasn't an active case, but it also was not fully closed. And that is a way, as I mentioned before, for those in power to keep a little hook in to Burisma and Mr. Zlochevsky.
And right around the time the bribe was paid, Burisma undertook an effort to spruce up their board, and they added, I believe, the President of Poland and some other luminaries. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I don't exactly know what the timing of all of this was.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, to the elements.
And, one of the folks they added to the board was the Vice President's son, Hunter Biden, which, raises questions. Is he a genius on the corporate governance front? Is he a genius with the Ukrainian oligarchical systems and cleaning that up? Or was he just added to the board because he's the Vice President's son? Was that ever, a concern, or at least the perception of that concern addressed?
As I said, I arrived in August of 2016, several months before the elections and several months before President Trump took office. And it was not a focus of what I was doing in that 6-month period.
Okay. Was the issue ever raised at all?
Not.
He was still on the board, I think, at the time.
Yeah, my understanding from newspaper accounts is that he just recently left in 2019. I never met him, never talked to him. And I'm sorry, what was your question?
He was still on the board when you arrived at Post, and was just wondering if at least the perception problem was brought to your attention as the ambassador.
I was aware of it because, as I told you before, in the deposition, there had been in terms of the preparation for my Senate confirmation hearings for Ukraine, there was a question about that and a select answer. So I was aware of it.
Okay.
Yes.